Awesome. So let's chat about like creative breaks, artist breaks, work breaks. Because I think like if it's a work break that we talk about and it's art adjacent, or even if it's not, like it still kind of affects that. And I think like I've definitely felt that like breaks are necessary in order to like be the artist I want to be, or to be able to do the quality of work I want to do, or reach the people I want to reach.
Yeah. I think at least like my experience of breaks have definitely been like those moments where, because I know there's I definitely feel that pull between like I feel really overwhelmed, or I feel like I'm in a bad place, or I feel like I'm really struggling with something. There's a part of me that's like, oh, I want to do creative stuff where that, like, with that, I want to, like, that's a channel, or that's, and that in times have been, like, a really important thing. And then there's times where I'm like, no, I need to, like, I just need to be with myself right now. And I just need to, like, take a breath and, like, be in, you know, quiet or whatever it is, like just taking that moment where it's like, okay, I'm separating from like everything else that's around me and doing and like attaching myself to anything like that. But yeah, like I'd love to hear like some of your experience with that as well.
I'm curious about how long your breaks last. Because for me, it's like super high creative wave. I'm riding it, I'm making stuff, I'm in the flow, and then I burn right out. And it's like, okay, 1 month, we gotta step back. Might be still doing small things, but the creative brain isn't at the forefront. And then I hear normal people be like, yeah, my work ends at 6 p.m. and then I take my rest. I'm like, what? Who? So for breaks, do you guys take regular, intermittent ones, or are they big?
I'm definitely a big break person.
I was gonna say like definitely big break.
Like, and that's an interesting thing as well, because like that ties back to like the thought of like the idea of like working as a creative person and like the grind and like, okay, you gotta be like hustling 24/7, that whole idea. And
that's like, where your art's like worth will come. It's
like,
if you put all that work in, it's like your labor results. And
So it's that feeling of like, oh, like I am this creative person, but I also will have times where I'll go months without, or you know, whatever the break is, like I'll go a long period of time without like really having like a project or like a thing that I'm doing. I wish I could manage it better. But yeah, it really feels like hitting a wall, and it's a forced break, and it's not even restful because I have to recuperate like the overdrawnness, and that takes time. And then what is actual rest when I'm always thinking about, that'd be a cool painting, that'd be a cool print, this would sell well. It's like, if I'm still thinking about that, am I really resting?
I actually really relate to that, as much as I don't I'm not really working with those mediums per se as much, but like whenever I am on a break, I don't think of it as a break. I think of it as me. I have crashed. And like, I lay here in the ruins of my creative despair. Like,
creative despair. Good pairing.
Like I don't feel like it is. Like it is too. It's like that break is a labor in itself. And like, and I try to think of it that way in a sense where it's like my rest needs to be like active or intentional, in that like I have to be like reminding myself and like tempering my anxiety, or tempering my anxieties. I'm like tempering my anxieties, and I'm like, okay, don't overthink this, don't feel depressed, don't do this, don't do that. But it's like, it's hard. A break is hard, especially if it's from the thing that you like see as being your purpose or your gift you can give to others or whatever it is. Like,
being okay with loving that part of yourself and loving what you do, and also being okay with saying, right now I'm not doing that, or right now I'm taking a break, or right now, like that's really hard when it's like especially when it's such a part of your identity, or it's part of like, there is that passion, there is that like love, but then, you know, saying, okay, like I have to let go for a second. That's difficult. That's like,
well, it's like you're not being yourself then, almost. It's like, I mean, like, I don't want to take this on a downturn, but like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, like, you're failing, you're not doing the thing you're supposed to do, you're being less than, like, the whole idea of being less than. It's like, you're less than your potential, you're less than what you could be doing, and it's like, that, I think, is like what the break is for. It's like, shutting that mind off, and being like, I just need this. This is all I need.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think identity is a key piece of that. Because if you identify as someone who creates, as soon as you're not creating, who are you?
Yeah.
So then your foundation is malleable and not solid. And that can be really, really scary. And I think an important piece of reconciling the business world with the art world has been, I am not an artist. I am a person. And I do person things like rest and eat and sleep and have meaningful relationships. And I also draw.
Yeah.
That's very important.
How do you feel like that relates to like the idea of like social influence, like in our day and age, of like your identity as an artist versus your influence as an artist? Because I think that is like a big like turning point for some artists of whether they feel like they're now an influential artist or they're an artist with no influence. And like that's like that social media world where it like your art it takes on a new life, or it becomes a new business, or changes in that world.
That feels like another part of identity. Again, like you can have influence and not identify as an influencer or whatever. And I think a lot of it can come organically, and I think a lot of positive influence comes by taking care of yourself, which is the funny thing, because when you spend so much time being like, my community, I'm right in there, I'm with you, I'm showing you everything, I'm making for you, it's all for you. Like, what influence is that? Like,
totally.
People are just gonna get the impression that this is how life is done. But you're hurting.
Totally. So
is a positive influence not identifying as an influencer?
Like if the goal is to be like an artist with like lots of followers, like that, it changes what the art is, and that changes your identity as an artist. And like that comes to mind for me because like I don't have that experience of being like an influencer, but I know people who are experiencing like those changes to their art, or have experienced those changes to their art. Like even my mom, like just followers changed the relationship she had to like how she was sharing her art, and it causes like sometimes extra pressure because like you now have demands and expectations, not like that people are knocking down your door and angry, but like that you are now set to a different standard in your own self.
And also having so much feedback on everything you do. We're not built to have that.
No.
Even if it's positive. It's like replying to 20 comments saying, I like it, I love it, thank you. It's like, It's like, I'm not supposed to know 20 people like my stuff. That's a lot of pressure. And then if it's 19 people next time, it's like, where did that one person go? Have I done something wrong? And if I identify as an influencer, that means I haven't influenced that one extra person. So I shift what I create. And it gets more and more dishonest, in my experience.
Well, in that even just bringing it back to that idea of identity that you mentioned, like your identity is shifting then too, probably with it. Like,
big time.
Yeah.
Yeah, where is that tied to? Is that tied to a number in the end? Like that's maybe like, I think especially now with artists like that, the world that we live in where like there's a certain unfortunate level of like necessity in some mediums where it's like, okay, you have to have some sort of outreach or whatever it is, whatever it looks like that hard question of how much am I thinking of what those people will think of the thing that I make? How much am I like spending time thinking about the reactions, thinking about like the number of views or whatever it is, like all that stuff, and like how much farther does that make me drift from that center in myself where it's actually needing to come from in the end. And then like that unbalance, I think, that comes from that. Like I think we've been talking about like burnout and stuff like that, like how much that contributes to, in the end, that happening, where we're like living in a way that is just not true, that's not like authentic, if you use that word in that way. Like that's, you know,
it's almost funny to think like if we were in an office and your job was one thing and then you started doing something else, you would then get like a new title. But when you're an artist and you shift towards like online spheres, marketing spheres, PR spheres, it's like, well what's your job now? Like, are you the artist now or are you the PR manager?
Yeah.
And like now, like one thing that comes to mind for me is like, and this is no offense to the people I know who are successful in their industries of PR and marketing, or if they're interested and they're passionate about it, but like those jobs can disappear and we will be all right as humans. Like same thing with like bankers, and I'm referencing like an author who's like a political author that I like, but he talks about this and like it is a thing where like a lot of that is like kind of just bullshit, and like if we could maintain that artist like validity in society and like be able to do that, have your needs met, be able to do these things and like not have to take on the burden of also being like a marketing professional, a business professional, like a go-getter who just has energy for days, and like someone whose mental health is in perfect working order. like you really have to be doing it all to feel like you can make it as an artist, I think.
Yeah, there's that idea out there where it's like, okay, this type of person makes it. If you're not this type of person, if you don't work this many hours in the day,
and is that capitalism just molding us? I would say so. I would say so.
Yes.
I mean, yeah. We are within it, so we can't really escape it.
Yeah.
Like the idea that we should work 12 hours.
Right.
Like,
yeah, that's true. That's pretty ingrained and like that idea.
Yeah. The question of how to honor what is real and true for me and how to make it function under a capitalistic narrative.
Yeah.
What parts of capitalism can work for me? What parts do I have to outreach for?
And even like, I think part of the challenge as an artist is like, what of those tools that are available to me and within this capitalist society that I live in, like what can I use for my advantage, like as a human? Like what can I take from capitalism that'll still allow me to feel good and feel fulfilled? And like I think that community like initiatives and like a lot of intervention with like collaboration with other people can really support individuals, but it's hard, like, when it's left on your own shoulders.
Yeah.
Like, that bit feels anti-capitalist, though. Like, the element... like, the element of, like, working together and supporting each other. Like, that's now we're talking about mutual aid. Which I'm all for.
Yeah, no, I know, but it's true.
It doesn't feel like it's...
I guess what I'm suggesting is accept it, but don't. Like,
yes.
But like, yeah, like I guess
it's not gonna change.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Listen,
I don't want to write that story.
What we want and what's happening, maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. It does feel like it's on the brink of tangible change.
Yeah.
But also, I feel like that's going to be such a slow process. So it's like, what do we do now?
So what what would you guys say to that? Like, what are your needs as artists, do you feel like, for the future of, like, your community, or, like, even just thinking about BC? How do we feel? What would be next? I feel like automatically more funding for arts and for artists, and for them to be allowed to have time and space to work, but that can't just be it.
Such a good question.
Yeah.
That's a big question,
It's a
too.
big question.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing you talk about, like, in BC, in this community, because the ways that I think about how this happens is online. Yeah, like, for example, Patreon is something I love.
Yeah.
That's a platform that I'm so happy I jumped on. And so technically that's like a capitalist platform, because you have people giving you money for this product. The way that I'm not gonna say fight capitalism, but fight capitalism is by, because you can do different tiers on Patreon, like how much you pay. For me, it's like, you choose how much you want to pay, you'll have access to the same stuff. So my biggest supporter could have only $1 to give me, and they'll have access to the same stuff that someone with $20 can have. Versus the capitalism format is like, you pay this much, you get this much. You pay more, you get more. But this is like accessibility. You only have $1? Cool. I welcome that. I celebrate that. I'm so grateful for that. You are not limited access because of how much money you have. But that's still on a capitalism platform. Patreon is a money exchange of something. So, that's an example I can think of tangible change, but that's online. I don't know what that would look like in the real world.
I know, and even too during the pandemic, it's like we're so isolated from our physical communities that, like, it is hard to think about what that looks like and what we're moving towards. But I hope it means, like, more people coming together, and I hope it means people who didn't even view themselves as artists having the opportunity to explore art. Because, like, I think about a lot of people who are financially not able to, like, spend their weekends while they work their 9 to 5 during the week, or where they work their multiple jobs. Like, they can't just go and make a painting. Like, I mean, they can, but, like, are they gonna feel good about it? Probably not. Like, if they've got needs to meet, and, like, I think
I guess, like, where my mind goes immediately is, like, the picture that we have of what art is in society, and what people have, like, told us is, like, the function of it, rather than the truth of, like, art is just human. Art is, like, like, there's no function in the end, right? Like, there's no, like, we've created things that are transactions, we've created, these businesses and stuff like that, but in the end, like, everybody has art, everybody is art,
that's so true.
It's like, so the more that, like, our world accepts that truth, I think, like, people will be, like, free to explore that no matter what capacity it is, and not having that image of, like, okay, if I'm gonna do art, I have to do this thing and get to this level for it to be worth it.
The worth it piece.
And, like, or, because I've talked to people that, like, talking about drawing, say, like, people who are like, I want to draw, like, I feel like I want to paint, but I don't feel like I'm gonna be good at it. Or I don't feel like I can learn how to do it. And how do you instill that feeling of, like, no, like, there doesn't have to be that end result of, like, I am this good at this thing, so I am worthy of doing the thing, or, like, something outside of me tells me that it's this good, whatever it is, right? Like, instead, that freedom to explore just because it is, like, that core thing.
You
know.
That has me thinking about like where else in life am I thinking I'm not worthy of doing something because I probably will not produce what people deem as good, and how do I limit myself because I want to be perceived as good in the eyes of others.
And like, who learns and just makes perfect things or makes perfect products? Like, you don't like start cooking and then like all your recipes start out as like edible. They'll probably be a little gross for a while. Like,
it's a couple burnt toast.
And then it's like, okay, now I can start to eat this. Like, but it is that, it's true. Like, how much do we, I think, like, I relate to that too. Like, I don't allow myself to do things that I think I'm gonna just suck at or embarrass myself, or like make people think that I'm then incompetent in all aspects of my life because that one example. Like, you know, like these are those like negative talk, or the negative talk that we get, like, I feel. Like,
big time.
Yeah, that idea of like being okay with making mistakes and like being okay with the learning process. Like I know I struggle with that a lot. I'm like that feeling of like the necessity of making mistakes in order to learn, and like the possibility of what's seen as failing, which I think is another thing that's completely made up. Like being okay with those bumps and, you know, mountains and valleys and all of those things that happen when you're trying to learn something.
I think like having a parent who is an artist like just helped me so much with like starting to create, because I often think about like the hardest part about creating being the like initiation of creating. Like I feel like for me at least, like that's where I notice myself hesitate, but my mom was always about like me just making things, and like she always called them like my Happies when I was a little kid. So Sinead would be like, Sinead, make your Happies, Sinead, make your Happies, and like I'd be making Happies, and like it was always like, but they were trash. Like my Happies were just splatter, but it was happy, and
they were happy.
I think like as an adult, I like heard, I was just watching like a Matisse documentary. It was like a series of artists, and they showed Matisse, and he was like making the cutouts in his old age, and he was saying this thing about like, what I took away from it at least was that he was bringing in the garden into his space, and the cutouts were to represent different shapes and feelings, and like that resonates with me because I cannot make the garden that I want, but I can make the colors, and I can bring the feeling that I want. And I think that if people were maybe taught to feel more with the art and like explore that, and like color can bring up certain things, texture, more like tactile learning with art, I think that's really good for people developing like themselves as an artist, to think like, it just can be about the experience, like you said, like it's more about that than anything. But
that mirrors art therapy very deeply. I almost went into studying that because for me that was like, cool, I can do art and capitalism at the same time. It's like, I've got the title, I've got the degree, my family and my family's friends are happy, like I'm the good kid, awesome. Then I was like, I'm not prepared for this schooling yet. So I left. But that essence of somatic healing through just slapping pigment down. You don't even have to look at what happened after you've done that. But just the like,
and kids
the Happies,
love that.
Like,
kids love that. Kids love color, and they're like, oh, that makes purple. Like, who knew? Like,
it's play, it's curiosity, and those things are anti-capitalist.
True. To be curious and to play, like that,
and that's like, I know I think we've talked about this before as well. Like the idea of play in creativity as like such an important aspect of it, that I mean generally in life as adults you're not encouraged to play. That's not a space that is usually available in your life naturally with like how things are, like, but if you're like that mindset, I think, of going into some things of just like, I'm just gonna play, like thinking about how that feels feels. Like I just feel like, oh, like even just saying that is like, I feel like things like open up in a way where it's like, oh wow, like I feel like I remember myself as like a kid, you know, like running around and like in imaginary worlds and like painting or drawing or making things up, making up stories and stuff. And it's like there was no, me as a kid wasn't like, oh, I have to do this project and I have to do like achieve these things and you know, like just remembering that little piece of it, I feel like just like opens things up in a different way.
I want to ask you both a question, and I can answer this too. Maybe it can be our last sort of thought on this, but I think when it comes to play and when it comes to your process, I'd be curious to hear about how you do that in the moments you feel the most playful. And like for me, what that means in a vague sense is just like, and I'll also buy you some time with this. I think that for me, play is mischief, and like when I can be a little cheeky and I can be a little like a bit like of a jokester, or I can be a little mischievous with things and not take myself too seriously and like allow things to kind of form as they go, especially too with my art. Like I do a lot of like naked clay things and they're very weird, but like I really love nudity, and my family's always like my partner will be like, when did she develop this obsession? But it's not an obsession, it's like part of that it's like is that playfulness. It's that idea that like I'm making like penis incense holders and like I'm doing these little naked people that will live in my plants, and like it's mischievous, and when I see it, it inspires me. And for me, that's like a way I bring that. Yeah.
I don't know if I have a solid answer yet. Do you?
Yeah,
it's a great question.
It's a really good question.
It's a tough one.
It is tough. It's like, because I think that I'm working on that. I don't know if because I've been thinking about that actually a lot recently, of like the feeling of not being able to let go when I'm creating things. Like I still feel like I have like this like self-aware like
your pilot brain.
The pilot brain, yeah. But like that feeling of just like getting lost in it, and I know that I for me, like writing is a very big, like that I always feel is like very much like when I think of what I create, that's like at the core of everything, the storytelling side of things, like writing. Like there are times where like I'll take a notebook and I'll go out into like nature or something and listen to music, and there's nothing else happening, there's nothing else around, and it's just whatever sort of comes up with that. Those are times where I feel like I can kind of let go a little bit of that, like, I don't know, the critical brain.
Yeah.
Then like sometimes those moments where I can take my camera and just go without a purpose, which doesn't happen often. Like that's the thing of like having a project or having like this like pointed thing where I'm like, I have to get this image or that's like the times where I'm just like, recently I was driving home actually from Kelowna, and it was a like absolutely beautiful sunset, and I happened to have this like my like old, like the first camera I ever had, like my old camcorder just like in the car, and I was like, I'm just gonna stop and film stuff. And that was really cool. It was just me on the side of the road. It was like a really quiet road, and I was just like running around a lake, like filming dragonflies, like
that's
the
very
water.
playful.
And it was just like, man, this is cool.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What happens in your brain when you notice? So you're in play mode, whatever. You're shooting butterflies and dragonflies and lakes and skies around.
That's
and it's all good and playful. And then you hear that critic come forth. What is the conversation with that critic? What does that look like? And how do you reconcile or spend time with it or put it away, whatever? Like, what does that look like?
That's a really good question.
Because we've all got one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And our relationships with it are different.
Yeah, I think at least my tendency in the past and present, still working on it, is critic absolutely takes over. So in my mind, I'm like, what's this for? You're not really capturing the right images. You missed that. It's over now. So like you missed it and like you didn't see that moment. You need to get this. Like, you know, again, why are you capturing those images? like what are you gonna do with this footage? Like that sort of thing. And I think, you know, I wish I had like a really good answer for like how I silence that voice.
That's impossible.
But
too.
I think, yeah, like it's definitely something that is like an ongoing, you know,
and like
struggle.
almost creating in spite of it too is can
yeah,
be good.
in spite of it. Yeah, it's
like
yeah, or I guess the practice of being like, with many things, I think like talking about the voices in the head and like the narratives, being like, hi, I see you, you're there, you do exist, and it's okay, and now I'm just gonna go do this thing still. And like it's like that's fine.
You know, it's an interesting kind of way to sort of imagine that conversation is like being like, yeah, look at that part of me that is so thoughtful or so careful or so professional, or like if you were like, oh, I feel like this, Sinead, I feel like we didn't get the shot, I would just be thinking, wow, Kora is so on it. She's so like 10 steps ahead. And it's almost like that idea too. It's like sometimes you need to think about it how other people would see you and how they would never put you to that standard.
Right. That's actually good. Yeah. Having that thought of like, okay, what would a close friend of mine say to that voice?
Yeah, that piece about integration, I think, is really alive in my world right now, because I just went through the big business boom period, and then the rejecting like, I can't do this anymore, it's not working, it's killing my spirit. And so now as I reapproach creating, it's like, oh, like, this isn't as honest as it could be, this isn't going to impact as many people as it could, like, just do this, it'll be more palatable, blah, blah, blah. For me, integrating that instead of pushing it away has been absolutely profound. To be like, wow, thank you for trying to keep me safe. I know you just want me to make money and have security. I know you just want me to feel safe in my social circle. I know you just want to do good for the world and make something that means something.
Yeah.
And you don't need to be here right now.
Yeah.
Like, this is time to play. After I make something, cool, let's figure out if we can turn it into something or if it's worth sharing or whatever. But like right now, you're cool. You can you don't have to be here.
Yeah.
And then if it comes back, it's like, okay, hi. Yes, that conversation of I see you. Yeah, cool. Bye. I'm walking out of the room again, back to painting. But it's this constant, for me, I haven't found that, like, you can leave the room and it's like, okay.
Right, like it works.
Yeah, it's like,
it's still there.
Another thing, one more thing.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
I feel like, again, mental health, like the way I relate to what you're saying is like my OCD. Like I can't, I think like with my journey and my mental health journey, I've never had a psychologist or a therapist be like, you're gonna be 100% fine one day, like look forward to that. Right. Like they've been like, learn how to understand like the impulse of compulsion or obsession and like what that means, and like let's figure that out. And I think like maybe it's the same with their creativity too, like that critic and that sort of judgment of play. It's like we need to not fight ourselves with it.
Big time.
Yeah.
That comes back to identity. That's what I'm picking up from what you've said.
Yeah.
It's like these intrusive thoughts or these, these things, whatever. It's not you.
Yeah.
That's just a being that is trying to guide you, keep you safe, help you progress, whatever.
Yeah.
And it might be doing it in an unhelpful way, but it's not you. And you don't have to identify with the thing that's happening right now. You can say, yeah, okay. Over here. You're fine. You're safe.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
This has been an awesome conversation about like identity and creativity in business, and like thank you for sharing your time and thoughts.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
So good. First pod, baby.
Oh yeah.